and welcome to Film Fam, inspired by true events. I'm Heather, here with my husband,
Brian, who is also here with our daughter,
Zoe.
and we're the Grays, and we're your Film Fam. Hey, listeners, we recorded this episode and had so many problems with it. I think there were some ghosts in the machine, some spirits in the works. Never fear, the episode is here. It was
That
just
rhymed.
it was just kind of crazy. A little bit of
a lot of ghostical problems.
yeah.
I kind of want
ghosticles.
to share because I'm proud of having solved the problem. So, the issue is now Zoe's home.
That is the issue.
Yes, a big issue in this house.
She brought all her ghost problems with us.
I did.
With her
I went and I lived in New York and I collected all these ghosts up from historic New York locations, and now I've brought them all home into our recording studio. Yep. But we figured it out. I am here with all of my ghosts, and they will be joining the party.
Well, it's not a party until the ghosts
Ghosts
get there.
walk in. Yeah.
You have some experience with ghosts, Zoe.
On a professional level, yes.
Yes, you were when you were
not personal ghosts.
when you were a child actress in Los Angeles. You did a voiceover for the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion
Blu-ray edition.
the Blu-ray edition.
So I'm not in the movie, but if you go
the special features,
right, if you have the Blu-ray of Haunted Mansion lying around and you go into the special features, I think there's like a graveyard tour section, and you will hear little 5-year-old baby Zoe singing Frere Jacques.
Something like that.
Actually, I don't think that's how they say it in the song. It would probably just be Frere Jacques.
Frere Jacques.
But
do it in a little spooky baby way.
La 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 la.
Wow. Wow.
yeah, so I'm on there. I remember recording that. I think we went to like some guy's house.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you remember that.
being
yeah.
in like some
Yep.
guy's living room.
Some kind
and
of
he was like, "What
Hollywood
songs do you
Hollywood
know?"
voiceover guy who records stuff for Disney, I guess.
The same way
Yeah.
Eric Robert phones in his voiceovers.
Hey, if you're that guy and you just happen to be listening to our podcast, I am available, and I would love to get some stuff for my reel. So
Well, you were an official ghost.
I'm a ghost. I wish my voice was in the ride. That would be my big claim to fame, was if my voice was hearable in the ride. So
Just go to
I'm just
Disney all the
manifesting
time.
that.
Just start
I'm gonna
and just like be
We're gonna go to Disney,
jumping
hide
on
inside
people's carriages in the ride and be like,
Yeah, there's gonna be all their pre-recorded voices. I'll be hiding amongst the Haunted Mansion stuff, just kind of like Spider-Man up on the ceiling there, and they'll be like, "I feel like this sounds different from the other voices," and they'll just look up, and I'm up there like really out of breath, not doing it very well because I'm suspending myself on the ceiling. Just Frere Jacques, Frere Jacques, man.
So stay tuned just 1 second from now for our Minisode about Ghostbusters and ghosts and supernatural events. Now we're ready. For today's companion minisode to our Ghostbusters episode, we are so excited to be talking to Candice Huber from New Orleans. They are a bookseller and writer, and also they have a supernatural story to share with us today. In our Ghostbusters episode, we were talking about spiritualism and mediums who can speak to spirits, because that was Dan Aykroyd's background and why he was inspired to write Ghostbusters, because his great-grandfather actually had a live-in medium for a number of years who did seances every week. And that's where Ghostbusters came from. So we're
super
so
cool.
excited to talk to you and hear your supernatural / ghost, whatever story you're bringing today, Candice.
Awesome. I did not know that about Dan Aykroyd, so that's really cool. And yeah, just to give a little bit of background before I start my story, because it's not really a ghost story, but kind of. So my family is very spiritual. My mom is a medium. And so we all grew up. I have a brother and a sister, and we grew up in like a spiritual household where there were kind of always spirits around.
And that's amazing because when I reached out to ask people about this, I did not know that that was your family background.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Which is awesome. But yeah, and I figured you probably didn't know. I mean, it's not a secret, but I don't necessarily just tell everyone either. But yeah, there were always spirits. We kind of just grew up with it. It was a very normal thing for us. And when I was about 16, I had this really weird experience. And after that, I asked my mom to help me block it all out because it freaked me out. So that's the story I'm going to tell. So it was 16. I don't even remember really where I was, but I was awake. I was not asleep. And all of a sudden an ancestor came to me, which was pretty normal. Like I said, like we were kind of always, spirits are coming in and out for us. So this person showed up and I don't really see them, but I feel them. So I knew this person was there and I knew it was some ancestor. And so I didn't really pay much attention.
That's just the feeling that came to your, like, this is what's happening. You could feel it.
Yes, I could feel it. So I knew that there was a spirit there, but I knew that it was just a benign family member. And so whatever, I wasn't paying that much attention. And then the world shifted around me. And I had no idea what was going on this whole time, but the world shifted. So I literally saw another place. Like the world around me became another place. And it was like 1800s. And I assume some place like Salem because of what happened, but I don't really know where I was. It could have been here, New Orleans. I don't know. But the world shifted and I'm in like a house and I'm having dinner with my mom and my sister and my brother, except they're different people. They don't look like my mom, my sister, and my brother do now, but I knew that it was them.
And you're like in a dream when you're like, I know I'm in this house, or I know that these are these people, but it feels kind of
But they all look different, but you know who they are. Kind of.
Were they about the same relative age?
Yes.
Same family structure.
Same family structure, same relative age.
Wow.
Same gender, which was really interesting because, you know, it's like we didn't have to be, but it was. Right. And I don't know if it's just because that's what I know, and so that's what it was showing me. I'm not sure. But we were just having dinner, and then this like mob of people showed up and bust in the door, and they take my mom off. And so we're watching them like take my mom, and we're all screaming. And my mom was actually wearing a talisman around her neck. It was like this necklace.
Wow.
And I remember that now. And they took her away. And so we're like running after them screaming. And I was older, you know, I was maybe about 20 in this scenario. Like I was a young adult and I was like screaming after them. And so because I was like running after them screaming, they took me as well. And then, you know, they're screaming like witch and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And my brother and my sister were watching. And so they put us in this wagon and they're hauling us off. And I'm watching, I'm like standing in the back of the wagon and I'm watching my brother and my sister run after the wagon, screaming and crying. And there was nothing I could do. And this whole time, like I was never afraid, which is the weirdest thing to me because this is the most frightening situation.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel afraid. I felt this really weird sense of calm. Like I knew it was going to be okay. And they rolled us up to the gallows and my mom was holding this talisman she had around her neck and she was saying, you know, she was like under her breath saying, I guess a spell. She was saying something and they were all like, you know, this family of witches needs to go. And they hung us. And so I felt them put the noose around my neck. I felt myself die. And I felt my soul literally leave my body and travel across time and space and come into my current body now. And then I sort of woke up and the world like shifted around me again. And then I was back in present day.
Wow.
I'm feeling that in my soul right now and in the back of my neck.
Oh my gosh. It was frightening, but also like really cool. Like I had all these like emotions at the same time because it was like, I have no idea. I was so confused. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know why. I still kind of don't know why, honestly. Someone wanted to show me something for a reason. And so, yeah. And so after that is when I asked my mom to help me block it. Cause I was like, I don't want this to happen ever again.
Right. Okay. But you're telling the story now. Is this from memory or is this a reconstructed narrative that you can't remember, but you know the story so you can tell it?
Oh no, this is a very vivid memory for me.
Ah.
Like it's one, like there's a lot of things I don't remember. This I will never forget. Like I could tell you even more details. Like every time I tell the story, it's exactly the same. And then, you know, I remember even more about it. So it's definitely, it's a very vivid memory for me.
We were just talking on our podcast. Dad's segment was kind of about houses that could be built to sort of keep out spirits or different ways to sort of ward them off. I'm interested in what you mean when you say that your mom helped you like block that kind of stuff from troubling you in the future.
Yeah, so she taught me how to essentially put up an internal wall. That and she taught me a lot about protection, and I always say now that protection is my superpower because I learned it at a very young age about how to protect myself and like my general environment, I guess, from anything. And you know, a lot of it is just a matter of visualization. You know, of actually visualizing. For me, I'm a very visual person. So for me, it's everything is super visual. So, you know, my mom was like, visualize an actual wall and you laying it brick by brick if it's a brick wall, or you constructing the steel wall, whatever it is. Mine was a brick wall because it was easiest for me to visualize. And so I literally like brick by brick, I visualized myself building this wall. And then the wall was built. And then to keep it up, I just have like mantras that I do every single day that, you know, that I say just keeps my walls up. I say I don't want any spirit alive or dead that's unwanted or uninvited. So if I invite it, that's fine. But if it's uninvited, I don't want it.
That's great. I have some experience a little bit with imagery work actually from like theater, from when we would do like method, when we would go into memories. They would always make sure to like teach us beforehand, like here's like a safety, like you have to construct like a place or something in your head that you like know you can go back to. And I think that's helped me just in life, like in, you know, the material plane of just being able to like, no, I have that kind of fortification inside myself, not from anything outside of my own mind, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of times, like for hurricane season, which of course we're in now, I always visualize like a bubble, you know, like I build a bubble and I visualize it like in the ground and leaving the ground and like surrounding my house and surrounding me. And it's like, I'm going to fortify this bubble and I'm going to visualize it here. And it's a bubble of protection. And I can do that with myself, like wherever I am, I will like say, okay, I'm creating my bubble of protection. And, you know, my mom says it's all about intention. And so that's, you know, whatever your intent is, you just need to make it super clear and they won't bother you.
Do you feel like your family are, like you guys are witches and that's part of...
Oh yeah, I identify as a witch for sure. I'm not sure my mom would, even though she kind of is. I'm not sure that she would say she's a witch just because of the connotation. I'm all about like taking back bad connotations of things. And so, you know, I'm like, yeah, I'm a queer witch. Two things that had terrible connotations, but I'm like, I'm taking it back. So I'm not sure my mom would say she's a witch, but you know, my mom and her family are super Catholic. So, you know, of course, New Orleans. So we were all raised in the Catholic Church. But I abandoned it when I discovered what it what it really was and like what it does. So so I'm like pagan with like Christian sort of influences, and my mom is the same. Although I'm not sure she would say that, but she is. I learned it all from her. So
that's something I've enjoyed about. I've dabbled in witchcraft. I've called myself a witch. I haven't done that stuff in a little while, so I don't know if I can still lay claim to the title, but it is definitely like something that I feel like I can hold. Like, I'm Jewish and I'm a witch, and those things are not in conflict because the sort of, I don't know, witchcraft as it is right now, as I approach it, of like making my own sigils or setting intentions and candles and that kind of stuff, isn't organized or denominational in like an exclusive way, where I feel like I can sort of incorporate it in the ways that are useful to me instead of having like a specific doctrine. And I think that kind of also, as a queer person, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why there are tons of queer witches, and that's what draws me to witchcraft as well, because it can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be very. Now there are people who will tell you, there are some Wiccans who are very stringent and will tell you that to be a witch it has to be this way. But generally, it's like, to me the whole point is that it can be whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't feel like witchcraft can really be too gatekeepy.
Yeah,
I feel
right?
like witches are part of breaking down those gates. Yeah, my mom was a practicing witch when I was growing up. Like, she actually did Santeria for a while because we lived in South Florida, and that was available. And she did some other things. So I grew up with that.
Ooh, I have a question based off that. Growing up in New Orleans, was there like a culture? I was just talking because I'm interested in visiting New Orleans for my 21st birthday that's coming up, and touring like the historic or the French Quarter. And I know there's some very specific kinds of, I don't know if it's called witchcraft or voodoo or whatever, that's coming out of New Orleans that I find really interesting. Was that like part of your growing up?
So, like, yes and no. Because it's definitely around. Voodoo definitely has a whole culture, and it's a separate, different thing. So I was not around voodoo a lot growing up. And it's still really big here. And, my mom wasn't really part of a community of witches. Like, she was very solitary. And I think a lot of that was because she was brought up Catholic. And so her parents were very anti-witchcraft because they were very, very Catholic. And so I just think that it wasn't there. And I've actually found more witchy community as I've grown to adult and kind of gotten into my own thing than I had really growing up. It was always pretty solitary. And honestly, I was always kind of afraid to like tell other people because I didn't know, especially as a kid and a teenager, like how people would react to that. I didn't, I was already bullied for lots of reasons. And so it's like, well, if they know this, it'll just give them something else. So I never really tried to find that community. And since my mom didn't have it, it was basically just our family growing up. Now the New Orleans has such an amazing witch community.
Tell us about the book you're coming out with.
Oh, yes. So I have a supplement. It's actually a Fate RPG. If you've ever played Fate, supplement. Yes. It's a monster manual, which we can't really call it that. It is it's called Carnival of Creatures, and it is a book of Louisiana monsters that come from Louisiana myth and legend. We picked 20 of them. And some of them are really well known, like the Loup Garou, which, everybody knows what that is. And the Honey Island Swamp Monster, which is really well known here, although I'm not sure it's well known everywhere, but that's one that sort of everyone knows here. But then we also have other ones that I don't think anyone have heard of. My favorite is the Argolfargan, which is just an amazing name. But also, it is a sexy Sasquatch that is basically like a wood ape siren that like lures people into the woods, and they're never seen again.
Is this like an Under the Pines kind of situation?
Right? Yeah.
Sexy
Kind of.
Sasquatch.
Oh yeah,
That
it's my favorite.
is my new shirt.
I think
Oh
it's
yeah,
big for
and when you
people
see
who.
the artwork, it's like, oh, I'd follow it into the woods for sure.
Well, I mean, there are people who like really want to get it on with Mothman, and Mothman is not even, you know, sexy presenting.
Right, that's true. So yeah, it is a supplement for Fate that will have Louisiana monsters in it that you can incorporate. We're also going to include 3 adventures that take place in different places in Louisiana. New Orleans is one of them, but we'll have one in like down in the bayou, and then one in North Louisiana, which is much more woods. It's where the Argle-Fargan is from. So we'll have sort of different areas of Louisiana. So 3 adventures and 20 monsters, and I'm really excited about it. The artwork is amazing. The artist that I worked with, this idea, I've had this idea a long time ago because Louisiana is so rich with like myth and legend, and you know, there's just so much of it here. And so I was like, man, I think it'd be really cool to have an RPG with just like monsters from Louisiana, but I cannot even draw a stick person. I'm so bad at drawing. I can write, but I cannot draw. So I was like, I can write the descriptions. And so I found an artist who is a children's book illustrator, actually, who is a huge nerd and was super into it. And was like, let's do it. And this was right before the pandemic. And then 2020 happened. This was like December of 2019.
Right.
Oh, wow.
2020 happened, and I thought it was just never going to happen. And then in late 2020, she contacted me and was like, so I know we talked about this like almost a year ago, but it's been a pandemic and I've had nothing to do. So I've drawn all these monsters. It's like what I've done during the pandemic.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Yes. And so now we're making the book. And so I'm really excited
that's
about
great.
That
it.
is so cool.
How can people buy it?
Sure.
Where do
you
they
can
find it?
Buy it through my bookstore is Tubby and Coo's Mid-City Bookshop. And so if you go to tubbyandcoos.com/carnival of creatures, you can purchase it there.
I will put the link up. Tell us about your bookshop. Tell us about Tubby and Coos.
Tubby and Coos.
Because you can buy things online through that.
Yes, you can. We ship
Yes.
anywhere in the country, and Tubby and Canada actually. And Tubby and Coos, we are a niche genre bookstore, so we sell mostly science fiction and fantasy. We're definitely a store for nerd folk, but also we have romance and witch. I have a whole section for witch fiction and witch nonfiction.
You're stocking a
and-
lot of Anne Rice.
Well, kind of. I do. I there's another bookstore that is Anne Rice's home bookstore that is in her neighborhood where she lived. So they
so they
sell all the
kind
Anne
of-
Rice stuff.
yeah.
So I try to stay away from most of it, but similar
Sure.
things for sure. And so lots of genre fiction, local stuff. And then I'm the only queer owned bookstore in New Orleans, which
Wow.
is, you would think there would be more, but they're not.
Yeah.
And so I lean into my queer, witchy, progressive crowd, and stay in that niche, and it works out really well. So if those things, I'm sorry.
Does the decor follow those lines?
So it used to, and then I moved locations in the middle of the pandemic, and the store has been closed to browsing, and so I haven't decorated really the new location yet. But it will. I'm still trying to figure out the best ways if I want to do like a muralist again or what. So I'm working on that at the moment.
You should take some ideas from stuff that Heather has done for our annual Halloween party.
Oh,
We have some
awesome.
fun Halloween party
Mummified
decorations.
cats and old beer bottles with she replaced
Not
the
actual
labels.
cats, but yeah, we actually, we have a really big Halloween party, and we're pretty witchy. We have a lot of common interests, but it's actually been migrating for the last few years, like just staying out all year. My Halloween witch decorations.
Yeah, there's been a lot of just some ravens around on things. There's constantly just frogs, and I don't know if you've seen my mom's tattoo. I will just describe it for listeners. Has like a toad and some mushrooms, and
yeah, it's just my whole house is just looking more and more like I'm a swamp witch, but that's my vibe.
That's what I say. I'm like, because I get get teased a lot because I don't look as old as I am. And so I always tease back and say, well, it's because I'm an 800-year-old swamp witch. Like, duh.
Yes.
But swamp witch solidarity for sure.
It was a funny transition to college for me because I came from this like homeschooled, already kind of on the fringes teen friend group that we did a lot of witchy stuff together. And then I, came to New York and suddenly I was like talking about how, oh, it's a full moon, we should make moon water. And people were like, what? And I was like, I'm a witch. And they're like, what? What does that mean? What does that entail? And, people are generally supportive, but I forget that not everyone has the same connotations with spiritualism or that kind of stuff. But I think, there's different levels that you can comment. I mean, I know a lot of people that have, ghost stories. You guys have a story of when you hit a ghost with a pillow or you got hit by a ghost pillow or something.
Ghost pillow fight.
I got hit by a ghost pillow one time. I'll tell you real quick. I used to work nights, so I slept during the day, but it was bright in our room. And so you could actually just see everything that's there if you just opened your eyes. And this is with my ex-boyfriend, but I was laying there and I felt like someone just hit me in the face with a pillow, like hit me all in the face, paf, but didn't hurt. And I was like, what was that? And my boyfriend's like, ow. And he felt like he got punched, like hard. And we're like, what the hell was, nothing ever happened again. So I say ghost pillow.
There was
he
a
got
ghost that was real
fist,
mad
though.
at you. Oh, yeah.
I'd rather have the ghost pillow.
I don't know. I have had things that just don't have an explanation.
Yeah, we have a plantation. Well, we have tons of plantations down here in the South. But there's one called the Myrtles, and it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in the United States. And we went there one time. This is my favorite because it's a ghost cat. So we went there and, it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places, right? And so I was a teenager. And so, of course, all of us were like, let's go see for real. So we go to the Myrtles and, I'm just walking around and just look. It's like a museum now, right? So you're just kind of like touring and looking around and stuff. And I am listening to the tour guide and I felt there was a cat that just went like in between my legs that was like rubbing up against me. Oh. I was looking forward, but I bent down and pet the cat the whole thing. And at the end of the tour, I asked the tour guide about the cat. I was like, oh, like the little cat was so sweet. Like you have and he was like, there's no cat in here. I was like, wait a minute, there is a cat in here. I was petting it. He was like, no, there's no cat in here. And I was like, did there used to be a cat in here?
That cat has been dead for
Ghost
12
cat.
years.
Ghost cat.
Yeah.
Well,
wow.
Do you feel like it's dangerous for you to just walk around in your haunted town when you pick up on these things so easily?
I mean, that's one reason why I wanted to block it for myself because I mean, literally just walking around. I mean, it happens to my mom all the time. She'll be like in the grocery store and, somebody will walk past that has someone following them or whatever. And
it's like the sixth sense.
Exactly. It's kind of and she doesn't see them either, but she feels them. But, she gets these like just constant like bombardment of sensations. And that it's just too much for me. I was like, I got so many other things going on that, and I also want to help people so much that like if I got that sensation that someone's following someone around and they want to communicate with them or they're like, this person needs help them, I wouldn't be able to tell it no. And then I'd be randomly following a person around the grocery store being like, your grandma says, and it's like, I can't, it's too much for me.
I really think I want another reboot of Ghostbusters that's just Candice and their mom trying to like tell people that there's spirits following them.
Yes.
I feel like we could make that pretty entertaining.
I think so.
Do you have any witch or fiction books that you want to recommend that you feel? So I know that you're on the National Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the booksellers, right? For
That's
science
right.
fiction and fantasy booksellers.
Yeah.
So do you have any recommendations?
That's a really good question. So there are some really good witch books. The Year of the Witching.
Okay.
That one.
I'm gonna write that down.
That one was good. I'm trying to remember who wrote it. But I'm trying to look it up real quick too. But yes, The Year of the Witching. It was
Alexis Henderson.
Alexis Henderson. Yeah.
I just looked it up.
Awesome. And that book is super witchy and pretty frightening in a lot of ways as well, because this woman is living in like this Puritan society. It's, you know, a lot like my vision or whatever
Right.
I had.
Right.
She's living in this puritanical society and she has like these dark powers. And it's very cool. So I definitely think that one is good. I'm trying to think of another like witchy one, but a kind of ghosty one that is one of my favorite books I read last year is called Ring Shout. And that is by P. Jelly Clark. And that one is what if the KKK were literal monsters from hell? And it follows this group of women of color who are monster hunters. And they are like hunting these KKK so some of them are still human, but their hate turns them into these monsters that they then have to hunt. It was really freaky and really good.
That sounds really
those
good.
would be two
Lovecraft
recommendations
country-esque.
that I have that
Thank
I think
you.
people might like.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have a little question, which is Ghostbusters might not be perhaps the most accurate of, you know, how spirits manifest in the world, but as someone with a level of expertise, do you have any like depictions of ghosts in media that you feel like are the most like true to your experiences or your mom's?
It's a really good question. And like
Patrick Swayze doing pottery.
No. I wish that was accurate. But no, I mean I also can't exactly say because I don't see them, right? And so, you know, people who see them would be able to better answer that question because pretty much all media you see the ghosts, right?
Sure.
So
Do you go see horror movies about stuff like that, or do you avoid those kind of movies?
I watch them. Not all the time. I mean, like horror, I love horror books. Horror movies aren't always my favorite, kind of just depends, but you know, most of the time they don't bother me. Although if I'm going to watch a horror movie, I'd much rather watch something like Evil Dead or something like that.
Something that kind of takes it sideways.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the ghosts in media are never true to my experience only because I don't see them.
Sure.
And
It's hard to have a movie that's just a feeling.
right. Yeah. You can't really do that. Right.
I was thinking about your story, and I think it's so interesting that you didn't feel scared.
Right.
You know, like I wonder what that's saying to you, what the person who came to share this with you was sharing, you know, the meaning behind it, since you weren't scared when it was happening.
Yeah. I've thought about that a lot, you know, like trying to unpack all of that and like, you know, that I had this just calm. I was so calm and I wasn't scared and I knew it was going to be okay. And I, you know, even though my siblings are screaming and like I'm getting hanged, all this stuff is happening. Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to the soul journey. And, you know, knowing that like, okay, even when we leave this plane, the journey isn't necessarily over. And, you know, just knowing that even if we're not here, we can still protect our loved ones, I think is a comforting thought.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast and telling us your amazing story.
Thank you. I was trying to think of a good, because most of my ghost stories are very boring because it's like, most of them are pretty like benign, you know, like I don't have any sort of scary ones, but I was like, this is a really cool one.
Picked up Moby Dick and started reading.
Right.
Call me Ishmael.
Well, happy Pride Month.
Yes,
I'm glad
thank
we
you.
could have
You too.
on.
Pride Month.
Yes. Woo. Bye.
Bye.